Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue watching Welcome to Plathville. As I always say, if you need a therapist, get one. Don't use YouTube as a replacement for therapy. You deserve to have, a therapist that actually knows you and takes care of you. We all need therapy from time to time. All right, let's get to the show.
I really don't know what to do. Oh, Father, please tell Mom and Daddy what to do.
What was Lydia doing, though?
I think I'm gonna ask her.
Where is she?
I know you can heal them. Please.
Okay, so Lydia, the responsible 15-year-old, after this conversation, is having some emotion. I think she's afraid. I think she is uncertain about what's happening. She's lived her whole life in this insular family, and it's her responsibility to keep everyone in line. And to see this emotional reactivity against the mom, against the symbol of all the stability and safety and power in the family, would feel very scary to Lydia. For her, I'm guessing, for the older siblings to oppose the mom in this very, very powerful way, that for Lydia, she is just afraid in general. What's going to happen? And she sounds like she's praying so that the older kids will learn what they're doing is wrong. And the other kids are now going over there to talk with her. Let's see how they work this out.
Just please help my family to be
Lydia.
together again. Yes?
Lydia is really sweet, so sweet and very fragile and emotional. And she wants everyone to be happy, and she hates conflict. And so this just, I guess, breaks her heart, which hurts me.
All right, so that's another sign of parentification. I've been talking about this for a while, that when you have rigid families or families that are struggling at least with a little bit of anxiety and tension, they will usually elect a child to be parentified, meaning that that child is elevated in the hierarchy structure. Sometimes it's the oldest kid, but sometimes it's the middle kid. I mean, Lydia's right in the middle. And so for whatever reason, she was elected to be that person. And in order for the child to be what the family needs them to be, there's all these messages given to the child that they need to be responsible, that they need to not think for themselves, that they need to feel a lot of the anxiety of the family so that the other kids in the family can not worry about it and not be responsible. That's what the family system is asking of the parentified child, is you are going to sacrifice your childhood, you're going to sacrifice your well-being, you're going to sacrifice your contentment and ability to relax so that everyone else is able to relax, so that everyone else can be kids, because you are going to take care of all the kids and you're going to elevate yourself because someone has to do it. And there's various reasons why a family needs someone to be parentified. Sometimes it's because a parent is suffering from addiction. Sometimes it's because of a divorce. Sometimes it's because one of the children is exhibiting a lot of concerning behaviors, and one of the other siblings needs to be elevated to take the weight off of the parents. There's a lot of different reasons why. Another reason is modeling. It's possible that Kim, the mom, was also parentified, or at least elevated in the hierarchy, because she talks about how she had a single mom who suffered from alcoholism. It's possible that Kim, at a very early age, was elevated in the hierarchy and had to sacrifice her own childhood. And that normalizes that for you. And then as you raise your kids, you might actually think that's good to do that to kids. You might even be resentful of the fact that you had to forego your childhood and impose that on one of your own children subconsciously, because you're just so angry about the fact that your parents made you give up your childhood that you will take away the childhood of one of your children. I've seen that before, actually, in families. It's very tragic. It's all subconscious. It's not a conscious thing that people do. Sometimes it is slightly conscious, actually. I would actually be working with families in situations like this, and the parent might say something like, well, I don't know why she's complaining because I didn't have a childhood, so why should she have a childhood? They'll say stuff like that. But anyway, we just heard a description from Mariah that's very much in line with a parentified child. Let's re-listen to that.
Lydia is like really sweet, like so sweet and very fragile and emotional. And she wants everyone to be happy, and she hates conflict. And
Right. So that's another element, is they hate conflict because they depend on everyone else to be happy, and they've been elected to worry about everyone else. And when you're elected and treated as if you need to worry about everyone else, you don't worry about yourself enough. And when you don't worry about yourself enough, you can't soothe yourself, and you can't take care of yourself. In order for people to be able to soothe themselves and know what their needs are, a lot of attention has to be given to children as they're growing up that's very focused and one directional, where a parent is like, what do you want to do? How do you feel? Oh, it looks like you feel this way. Very much like a caregiver takes care, attuned, noticing the child, taking care of the child, reacting to the child, letting the child make mistakes, letting the child have emotions, and saying, that's okay that you're sad, that's okay. That's okay that you don't want to do chores right now. You can do them later. I understand, that kind of thing. Well, when you take that away from a child, then they don't have time to get to know their needs. They don't have time to figure out things for themselves, because they're always looking outward. They're always trying to take care of other people because they're given love and attention for that sole responsibility. Another possible reason why Lydia is parentified in the family is there are too many kids. When you have that many kids and two parents, some of the children have to take on the responsibility for taking care of the younger kids. And if you route all those responsibilities into one child, then you have a child that is denied their childhood way, way too much and doesn't have the ability to take care of themselves. What we would want to see is that all the children were socialized and encouraged and given attention and loved and expected to pull their weight when it comes to taking care of the younger kids. It looks like all of that went to Lydia. And so that makes Lydia more afraid of conflict, more fragile, and more worried about things flying apart. Let's see what happens here.
I guess they think that Ethan and Olivia have influenced you, which I don't think is the whole deal. I mean, Ethan and Olivia might have a part on it, and it's not saying the influence is bad or anything.
we're all just growing up to learn how to be our own selves. And like, I guess mom and dad don't like that because they think that they know who we're supposed to be.
Well, the issue...
and what we're exactly supposed to believe. But Ethan and Olivia have never told us what.
I will say that this conversation is wonderful. I mean, with the shows that y'all asked me to watch, it is rare that we see people, especially this age of people, talking openly about this. Now, you might have your own opinion about this. You might feel like you're more of a Mariah or you're more of a Lydia. I wonder if people are like that. You know, I haven't watched the rest of the season, but is there like a team Mariah and a team Lydia? I don't know. I'm guessing there's definitely a team Mariah because the show is definitely focusing on her. But anyway, they're talking to each other with respect. They're asking each other questions. They're listening. It's evidence that the parents raised these kids very, very well. So there's just a lot of strengths. We could imagine this being a train wreck where Lydia is just like, you're terrible because you're hurting mom and dad. And then Mariah is like, well, you're just a goody two-shoes. And everything flies apart. They're listening to each other. They're going through stuff. That's what life is. This is life. Going through stuff, having emotions, talking about it, being confused, living day to day. That's what this family is doing. And it's really glorious to see.
I don't think that keeping us from Ethan and Olivia will solve the problem. Not at all.
I think it's just going to make it worse. I feel like it's a control issue.
Yeah.
And mom and dad, they are the parents, but our whole lives, they've never let anyone in our life from the very beginning that will have any different say than what they believe.
Okay, so you just heard what Mariah said there, is that we think it's a control issue, that our parents are just wanting to control. That is not a healthy narrative for the kids to retain, or for anyone to retain. People rarely, and people talk about this a lot, they'll be like, oh, he's so controlling, or she has a control issue. That's the surface behavior. You would look at that and go, oh, they're being very controlling. There's always something else going on underneath that is more understandable. And I'm guessing for Kim, the control issue is the top layer, and underneath it is just utter fear and terror of what could happen if she lets go of the control, that maybe even that her own child died. I wonder what her narrative is about her own child dying. Was that a day when she was letting go of control a little bit? Who knows? But the point is that underneath that control, so what we would hope is that the family, the parents, can explain to the kids, look, I know we're being very controlling, but here is why. And that's what you always want to do. When you have, so this is an issue with parenting that I would talk about with a lot of parents. This idea between control and guiding. Now, different cultures deal with this differently, and there's a lot of different ways to do it. But the way I would explain it to parents is this. I would say, when a child is young, you don't guide them mostly. What you're mostly doing is controlling them. If they run out into the street, you don't try to guide them back, and a car is going to run them over. You don't try to guide them out of the street and onto the sidewalk. You just grab them. When a child is in the 2nd grade and is refusing to go to school, you don't say, well, let's talk about this. You just say, no, you're going to school. I mean, unless there's some reason why the kid doesn't want to go to school. But a lot of kids do that. They just wake up, I don't want to go to school. You don't negotiate with a 2nd grader. You just tell them, you're going to school. That's how it is. Now, of course, you would listen if they're being bullied, but anyway. But if they just don't want to go just because they just want to stay home and watch cartoons, you don't negotiate with them. You're just like, yeah. Anyway, you're going to school. Okay. So there's a lot of control that is healthy and necessary for younger kids. Older kids is when we start to transition into guidance. And we don't necessarily want to control, because when we control them, then they have these narratives of, oh, you're just controlling because you have a power trip. You just want to make my life miserable. And so then we enter into guidance, where you're actually explaining your wisdom. You have wisdom. You're an adult. You're a parent. You've been there. You've done that. Mariah doesn't know. And she's even said that. She's like, I'm very naive. So you have to download your wisdom into them. That's what we call guidance, so that they can drive the car for themselves, so that when they are out in the world, they can steer away from danger themselves. You won't be there to steer them away from danger. And so you have to help them make decisions for themselves. And the way you do that is by guiding them and explaining things to them and helping them make decisions, and giving them the wheel, giving them the opportunity to make the mistakes, so that they can learn that you were right and go, oh, you were right. To control everything of an older child is to deny them that very, very important learning developmental stage. So hopefully they'll have a conversation so that the kids no longer think of them as controlling and more as trying to help them. But anyway, let's continue watching.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is kind of that there is division, and where a house is divided against itself, it will fall. And that's happening.
Well, but we can just stick together and say we're not going to fall. Other people can fall if they're willing to, and if they don't want to stand, they don't have to stand, but we can pull through.
Yeah, so again, it's great they're having this conversation. For Lydia, she is elected in the family to speak the voice, I think, of the parents, really, that she is terrified, and the family is. And so I keep talking about systems theory. Another way of seeing this situation from a systemic point of view is that Lydia is elected by the family to try to keep everyone together, not because Lydia wants to keep everyone together, but because the whole family wants to stay together. I think that's pretty clear. I think we would understand and believe that everyone in the family wants to stay together. They want to stay in relation to each other. They want to stay close. And so you need someone to voice that. So an example of this is, take a family and people are starting to talk about getting a puppy. And maybe one person in the family is like, oh, I think we should get a puppy. Okay. So the family understands as a collective that there are pros and cons to getting a puppy. The pros are you have a puppy and it's cute. The cons are you have to take care of it and all these kinds of things. Okay. So the family understands collectively that there are pros and cons. And the family has already elected people prior to that moment who is going to tend to be the pessimistic one and who's going to be the optimistic one. Who's going to be the one to point out the responsibility issues and concerns, and who's going to be the one that's going to dream and have enthusiasm. And you socialize the kids early in life to be that person. And so someone will say, and everyone will know who that person is. Like, think of your family that you grew up in or the one you're in right now. Who would be the person that would say, yay, let's get a puppy? Usually everyone knows who that person is. Oh yeah, it's that, or it's me. I'm the person in the family. Everyone knows they're the one that would say, let's get the puppy. And then also identify who in your family is the person that would say, well, puppies are a lot of responsibility. The family, the way that we typically look at that is that the puppy person is free-loving and hopeful and energetic and open, and then the responsible, the skeptical person is a stick in the mud but responsible, that sort of thing. So we tend to look at them as having their own personalities, and that's why there's this difference. Another way of looking at it is the system needs one person to be the puppy person and one person to be the responsible person, and they just predetermine who those people are by socializing them for a variety of different functions, a variety of different moments. The responsible one is always the responsible one. The puppy person is always the puppy person. They're a puppy person about a lot of different things, okay? Now, why do we do that? Well, because we like things to be predictable. If every new situation that came our way to a family, we had to re-elect everyone to the roles, then we wouldn't know what to do. So let's say that we just erase all the roles in a family, and then someone says, hey, let's get a puppy. Well, now everyone's looking around as like, well, who's going to be the puppy person? And who's going to be the responsible person? The other thing is when you elect people early to be the puppy people and the responsible people, then you get a lot of practice being the puppy person. You get a lot of practice being the responsible person. Lydia has been practicing her whole life to be the responsible one. Mariah has been practicing her whole life and given a lot of love and attention for being the puppy person. And Mariah, her whole life, she's been given love and attention, and she's been practicing on how to be a puppy person. So as this family is they're not faced with a puppy question, they're faced with what are we going to do as the older kids start to get old enough to do other things and want to do other things? That's their conundrum. And Lydia, the responsible one, she's had a lifetime of practice, and she knows that the family needs her to be this way, and the whole family wants her to be this way, to be the person of like, there's some risks here. There are some problems here. We need to be safe. And everyone also knows that Mariah is going to be we're growing up and we want to do other things. The whole family needs that dialectic because someone needs to voice that side of the dialectic, that side of the debate. And when we see it that way, then we see that, it's not that Lydia wants to have a puppy, or it's not that Lydia wants to grow up fast, it's not that Mariah wants to grow up fast and that Lydia wants to be conservative. It's that the whole family understands that there's a debate there, and those people have just been elected to that. How do we know this? Well, what we find when we actually take individuals out of their families and they are free to develop their personalities outside of the family and exhibit their personality, they exhibit a different personality. So, for example, if we took Lydia, the responsible one, I keep looking at my family tree. If we took Lydia, who is the very, very responsible one, if we took her outside of the family for a bit of time, and maybe like cousins, say she hung out with some cousins, and in that family system, there's someone that's already established as the responsible one, it's very likely that Lydia, the responsible one in this family, would not be that responsible anymore, because someone else in the system has that role. The system needs someone to be the responsible one, and someone already has that role. And Lydia wouldn't need to be that role, and she would be free to develop some other role. And we see that a lot. It's tempting to look at Lydia and say, well, that's how she is, and that's how Mariah is. Another way of looking at it is that's what the system needs them to be. Because in order for a system to be healthy or to express all the different ideas, someone has to step forward and be that person.
If I were told that I couldn't be with any of my siblings, that would be really hard for me because we grew up together when we were young. You guys were our only friends. Like, we didn't have really any friends except our siblings.
The more we stay apart, the harder it'll be to come back together.
So you hear the debate, and it makes total sense. They're both right. For Mariah, she's saying, we didn't have any friends, and that's kind of weird. We should have friends. And Lydia is saying, the further we fly apart, the harder it's going to be for us to come back together. Both of them are right, and I'm guessing everyone in the family has both of those sides of the dialectic inside of them. It's just that they're the ones voicing it.
Just stick together and stay strong through the whole thing, and it'll all be okay.
Yeah, we'll make it through.
Okay. Yeah, it's okay.
And again, big strengths we see in this family. They listen to each other. They tried to reassure each other. It could have been a total train wreck of a conversation. It's not resolved because it's not really resolvable at this point. There's no way for Lydia to walk away from this situation feeling completely okay because there's a lot of uncertainty that Lydia has been elected by the family to feel. But for the most part, they're bonding, they're listening to each other, they're reassuring each other. And this might have been a very important conversation for them to have. Maybe it was important that Mariah hear Lydia's words and that Lydia hear Mariah's words to understand, oh, okay, I guess there's another side to that. And it's just really great to see a show that is exhibiting functional behavior, a reality show that's exhibiting functioning behavior. If you haven't already become a patron of the podcast, you can do so now by going to patreon.com. That's how we know you like what we're doing. When people become patrons of the podcast, that gives us the ability to actually make more videos and more content. And so if you like what we're doing, please become a patron of the podcast. There should be a link below. And please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.